You want to really figure out what's that personality. It goes beyond just the looks of the brand. And then tied into that is clearly understanding your demographic, your target audience. And that comes from listening.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And, folks, thanks for that recycle idea that you had just before when we were in the green room, folks. Camden had to clean up the studio. Got some recyclable items in the back there. And, it reminded me of the original recyclers, at Texas A&M when I was in the Corps of Cadets, because we were conscientious of the environment. We would recycle.
Sure you were.
Yeah, we were. We would recycle bottle caps. I bet you weren't thinking that, were you, folks?
Your Spurs?
We did. And
Bottle Cap Alley. I know Bottle Cap Alley too.
Bottle Cap Alley, because your brother had to do the same thing. Only difference is I had 87 bottle caps on each spur. Your brother didn't have that many, but just because of class years, we do the math on that, folks. And that's a lot of damn bottle caps to do and figure out how to make a spur that stays on your shoe and. Yeah, good.
And that is what made you such a great engineer in the Army, and it all goes back to Texas A&M and all those great things, right?
Leadership. That's right.
Yeah, buzzword. Communication.
Leadership, and making a difference in the world, because we were picking up the bottle caps out of Bottle Cap Alley right there next to the Dixie Chicken. Katie, you ever been to the Dixie Chicken?
I have not. No.
Oh, well, let me tell you something.
That would have been real convenient.
You are missing an experience, and Katie and folks, if you find yourself in College Station, because there ain't a whole lot of people wander around and end up in College Station. It's kind of out of the way. But if you find yourself in College Station, Texas, the Dixie Chicken needs to be at the top of your list. Mm-hmm. You ain't getting nickel pitchers anymore. However, everything else in that place is pretty much the same as it was when I was there picking up bottle caps. And
folks, if you go there and you find where Otis scratched his name and class year into the wall somewhere in the Dixie Chicken, take a picture, tag us, give you a hat or something.
Yeah, because I don't remember where that is.
Sure, you did it a few times. Just to make sure.
It might be in more than one place. Who knows? But there's something to be said for that, and how long that place, because it wasn't new when I was there. It'd been there for many years when I got there. Katie, what would you, as folks, if I didn't fully introduce, it's Katie Smith is joining us today, and she's a marketing expert. And I'm going to ask her, what the heck was the secret of the Dixie Chicken that it's sustained itself? Heck, it's got to be probably 50 years at this point for a bar restaurant. How the heck is that marketing or what?
I think it's probably a combination. There's, the location factor, and then the brand that they built. So all these memories that you have, all these traditions that revolve around this, that get handed down from generation to generation. I mean, if you can figure out that kind of marketing, and it happens organically, then you've really hit the honey pot there, because it doesn't cost very much. You're relying on your evangelical fans to keep the messaging alive. That's the goal. That's like what you want to create with your relationships and your marketing.
Yes.
I think.
Well, I was just going to say this episode is not sponsored by the Dixie Chicken.
It should be though. No, Katie, I was just going to ask because I think the interesting thing as an entrepreneur, you start on a business, got the good idea, want to go help people, all that kind of stuff there. And then you're looking, you're like, gosh, I loved going to College Station and going to the Dixie Chicken and, the way it made me feel and traditions and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm starting a business in 2025. I can't exactly jumpstart the tradition thing. There's a weird thing there because you're trying to build this out like family and tradition. But then I also just opened up last week. What is your advice to somebody who wants to kind of start crafting that legacy? Because you can't really artificially do it. I think to your point, Katie, what's the term they use in politics? The astroturfing doesn't really work like that when it comes to a business. Like we're throwing the traditions out there. It feels weird. So what are your thoughts on that and how you start to build that kind of a brand?
There's two pieces. I'm so glad you brought this up because especially what we're seeing right now, it's coming back around to these two pieces being the most important for your company. The first is brand. So everything is a cycle. We're coming back around to the importance of really building out and understanding your brand. And that's not just like what it looks like, but it's really think about the personality that you want to craft for your brand. You want it to be very specific. And that people can see it and get a feeling. They know what that feeling is, just like how we're talking about, when you guys talk about the Dixie Chick, you get a feeling. And so you want to really figure out what that is. What's that personality? It goes beyond just the looks of the brand. And then tied into that is clearly understanding your demographic, your target audience. And that comes from listening. So we're really seeing there's a lot of like upheaval that we're feeling and going on, and people are not sure what to do. And the first thing that you do is you go to your customers or who you think are your customers, and you ask them, what are they experiencing? What do they want to experience? What are some of their fears or their problems or kind of like the bad feelings? And then how can you come in as your business? What can you solve? Even if it's, if you're, a restaurant, I want to bring, do I want to bring relaxation? Do I want to bring celebration? Do I want to bring those, let's go back to those rowdy good times when we were young, but being very, very clear about what that looks like. That's where I think we all, if you're starting a business, that's the best thing to start to right now with your marketing. And if you've been doing it for a little while and you're just feeling a little stuck, you got to go back to your brand and really go back to understanding your customers. That's the top thing you can do right now, no matter where you are in business.
How do you help folks? Because I love, and I think this is so important for our audience too, the startup realm where they've got an idea and I'm going to make a widget. And I've got the blue ocean theory of this widget is better than any other widget that's ever been made, and I'm establishing myself. What advice do you give, that startup Bubba who says, I've got the best widget ever, that in order to do those things to make it into, and I'll call it a legacy company, to make it into that legacy company, what can they do on a shoestring budget?
So yeah, I think it's creating out a strategy and then setting up what the priority. What goes first? What goes second? What goes third? You don't have to do everything all at once. That's really important. You don't have to do it all at once, but it's good to have a plan so that you have something to work for. You have something to save up for. I think it really starts with the customers. You really need to understand your market. So investing in that market research to see where in the field do you fit, what problem exactly do you solve, who are those people? And that's going to be really important. Really understanding what that market looks like. Is there a market that you didn't think about? Understanding the SWOT. So this is where business and marketing, they're intertwined and they need to be. It's really important. So you can do double duty with your market research, but you've got to have a clear understanding, especially right now. There's so much competition. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so the people it's harder to just have an idea and launch it. If you just take that time, that investment to understand the market, you can understand where and how to launch it. It's just going to make things easier. You're going to spend less money in the long run. You have a bigger chance of success.
And folks, for those of you who have forgotten, because I'm sure you all know SWOT, strengths, weaknesses,
Opportunities.
I wasn't sure if you were trying to tee one of us up or if you forgot it.
No, you know how I spelled it? SWAT. I was like, damn, what the hell
Oh, I love it.
Oh, please. Well, yes. So, folks, if you're gonna use an acronym, make sure you spell that acronym right.
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
I was going to ask on that. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, kind of building on that, talking about, like the different, like you got the widget that solves all the problem. Like assuming you have, I think for the marketing conversation, we have to assume the product is right, the business idea is good, and that there is a opportunity there, right?
Yeah.
So my thought is with that, it's like, okay, so you got this great thing and you have the vision, like we were talking about with the brand and all that kind of stuff, but there's not necessarily the customer. You haven't necessarily found the right people, or maybe you need to educate the people. Like you have something that is so new, so different, or so niche that's like they don't even know how much they need it. I'm interested in that kind of an area, because I think for a lot of businesses, you might have this beautiful idea and it's like, oh, people might not quite get it right. And you don't want to wind up like the comparison that comes to mind is like the artsy movie guy who's like, oh, you just didn't get the movie, Katie. You just didn't get it. And it's like, that doesn't keep the lights on for the business. So there's got to be some educational component with that. What are your thoughts on how that ties into the marketing strategies?
So building out a customer journey is incredibly important. The way that people want to learn these days is shifting. It's shifted really fast since COVID. The research is coming out. People are taking a lot more time to do their own research. So they want to be able to engage with information about your product on your website before they talk to you, which is really challenging for us. So it's so there's two pieces. It still comes back to having those conversations, maybe finding the people who you think are your good customers and just asking them for conversation about what are their problems that they're having, that this product could solve, that they could solve. Ask them about the product. Ask them about what it would feel like if their problem was solved, or if they could do it faster. So instead of going in with a sales pitch, go in curious and asking about their state. What is their life like before the product? And then what would it mean for them to have the product solve this problem or come in and do this? So you really understand the language, because you want to reflect that language back to them. So the other thing that we often do when we know what we're doing, right? So if you're thinking about a knowledge level, we're here, we're in the weeds, we know it. And what we have to do that's so challenging is pull ourselves back up, especially for that first phase of the customer journey, the discovery phase. They don't have the same language that we do. And so we have to reflect their language back in order for them to make that connection and understand. And that's really where it can get tricky. And sometimes it's so hard to pull yourself back up there. If you talk to somebody who's there, just like write down their words, write down what it's like. If somebody has used your product, interview them and ask them what was going on before, why they chose to do this. Write down the language and then use that back in your discovery content. So if you're going to do a blog post or social media or your advertisements, really reflect their language back to them, because that's where they're going to connect. I think that really can, we often don't think about the journey that a person is making, especially since people don't make rational journeys, like none of us do. So we may say, I could plan, like, first they're going to go here and then they're going to get this piece of content and then they're going to get the next piece of content and it's going to be great. But they don't do that. They like come in from over here and then they bounce down and then they bounce over and then they'll bounce somewhere else. And so really it's like a game of pinball. And you have to have these like little islands of information that people can bounce into. the way that they will, which can take some time in planning, but it's sort of like a progression, right? So you have the discovery language that we talked about, and then there's the consideration stage is the next stage. And that's all about educating, right? And that you can split that up into however many, depending on your company, however many stages, where you start educating them a little bit more. You introduce them to your language. They start to see the benefits. You can share customer experiences, testimonials, case studies. You can share a little bit more of like the product, but you're not selling them on that yet. You're educating them. And then they make a transition between that consideration, the end stage of consideration, and the decision stage. And that's where you get into like the weeds and the nitty gritty of what is the sales process like? What is the delivery process like? What is it like to use this product? And then there's that after stage, which is we want to delight them. So what does the onboarding process look like? How do we check in with them? How do we make them so excited that they want to talk about this? They trust us. We solve their problem. It's a whole process that we go through that really is marketing, and it's really tied up in all the different processes of the company as well. So marketing is really sort of a good flowing marketing isn't in a silo. It's not just making pretty pictures and like going to events and having fun. It's really about connecting with all the different pieces of your company, getting customer insight. So, depending on how it could just you be doing all of the work right now. And so you may be able to understand, have direct access with the customer at all those stages, which means that you can ask them what they need at every stage. If your company is a little bigger, you might have a sales team, you might have a customer fulfillment or success team. Marketing should still be coming in and asking them what they're hearing from customers, what they wish they had to give customers, and then building that into the plan. And that is like a good, fully functioning, healthy marketing, strategy department that you can rely on. That's really going to, support your customer throughout their whole process and make them so happy with you that they're going to buy from you again.
So I'm gonna play the devil's advocate, the business owner, because it's like, dude, just get this time. Okay, just get this shit out there, sell. I mean, crap, we need money, we need capital, and you're like, well, we need to talk to the customers, Otis. And no, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So how do you help that business owner who is like that? That's like, just get out there and sell this shit.
I mean, I just described the like perfect world scenario. Sometimes we have to do both, but so you can learn on the fly, but you have to, it comes down to money, right? If you don't do this work, you're going to spend a lot more money to get a return. And that's really what we see. So many times people don't trust marketing, they don't trust advertising, or they don't think it works. It's because they don't have the right input, which means that it's going to cost you more. You're not able to target the right people at the right time, which means you're just sort of like putting things out there and hoping that it comes back. And you don't have the right input. So you're going to spend a lot more money with a lot less return. So you have to, sometimes, most of the time you don't have the time to like put in this beautiful thing, but you should be working on it all the time, and you should be prioritizing. So you can also learn from the data that you get from the advertisements that you put out, the people who start to respond. If you're going to do digital advertising, the first 3 months are experimentation. So if you have a good digital marketer, we're taking as much good input as we can get, and then we're using those first 3 months to run experiments. So we have a hypothesis and we're testing, we're learning from that and adjusting, sometimes daily. And we're getting all of that good information until we have a better idea of who's responding, what they're responding to, and what they want more of from us. So there's a lot of ways that we can do that on the fly. And you should be doing that on the fly. Combination of getting data and then getting evidence from your customers, talking to the people within your business. So you can be building it up, but but you can't just expect marketing doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that you put something out and then all the people come back. It works like that if you're lucky. But the more planning that you put into it and continually doing it, building that up, it's going to cost you less money. I mean, I have a client right now. Normally, let's talk about marketing spend in general. Just generally, you want to spend 3 to 5% of your gross on marketing in general. And
does that hold? Just to pause you, because I love the fact that you gave that detailed data point. Does that hold true? For $100 million business as much as it does for $100,000 business?
Yeah, I mean, the things that really affect that are competition. And so if you're in a highly competitive, environment, you're going to have to spend more. If you're going into a new market, you're going to probably spend a little bit more than that. So there's things that kind of go after that, but it's just general. But as you get higher, it really depends on your market and what you do. You can tweak that, right? So I have a client right now, and we spend about 1% on marketing because we are very targeted and we take advantage of everything that we can within our market to not have to spend a lot. So we put a lot of effort into understanding our customer. We put a lot of effort into understanding exactly where they are, what we need to do with our spend. There's other things that go into it. Like we put our biggest competitor out of business for a little while. So then there was a vacuum, that's changing now. But we did that because of our smart marketing. We took a big chunk of that market and they weren't doing what we were doing. So, and there were other things. I mean, I can't take full credit for that. They made some poor business decisions as well. But, but I think about that all the time. But my goal is to make it as lean as possible, but you have to do other things. If you are just going to, I don't want to do that work, I don't want to do it right now, then you can spend more. By all means, you can go faster and you can spend more. But most of the people that I talk to are on a budget. And we're trying to eke by, especially as we're a startup. So you still do, it's a good idea to spend, especially, when you up that spend is if there's competitors and you're entering a new market. So if you're a new company, you have a new product, you're going to want to try and if you can eke out a budget to kind of blast things out there. But if you do it really thought out well, you're going to be so much more targeted. You're going to get a better return on that investment. So that's really where, it's always you're playing with time, money, and quality. Mm-hmm. And most of the time you can't have all three.
It's the iron triangle of project management applied on marketing, ain't it?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Katie, you mentioned the kind of changes since COVID and the, changing the way the customers approach products, want to get more information, doing their own research, those kind of things there. It reminds me of something, and for the life of me, I was trying to get these numbers exactly right, but it was an old rule of thumb I got from somebody, might have been a marketing professor 10 years ago, I don't even remember, but it was something along the lines of that you have like 50% of people that buy emotionally, that it's like, oh, this is exciting, I want to buy. There's 40% that this is the one I couldn't remember, frankly. But then the other piece I remembered was the 10% of logical buyers, and meaning people who are really wanting to deep dive into that information. And the logic behind it was basically then for those people, you don't want to put all the information up front. If you're picturing like a web page, you don't want to put it all up here. You can put it down at the bottom because the type of person who wants that information is the type of person who's going to read through the whole website and find it. Could you talk some on like that kind of piece of logic and how you see that change with what you were talking about post-COVID?
Yeah. So people, that makes a lot of sense, what you're saying. What we're seeing is that people, before they get to the sales cycle, they want to consume more. I just yesterday read I read like a summary of of a couple different reports. And so I have it on my list to go back and dive into those, what that change looks like. It was specifically for B2B. So I think we've seen this going with B2C before. B2C is always like more, is always a little bit ahead of B2B, for better or worse. But they're saying that the statistic is like, 50% or more of people want to consume like 7 to 8 pieces of information before they get to the sales cycle. And, that's like people looking at software and different things like that. But the piece is having different, think about all of our attention spans, right? Like we need things in chunks. So if you can get an email list, if you can do a good job with your email, like if you have for your product, maybe you have like a case study that people can download, or you have like a checklist or some kind of tip, you can get people into an email cycle, and you can do a drip email where you have emails that come out automatically like every week or so, and they can just focus on one little topic. You're dripping them the information instead of just like fire hosing it to them. You're letting them take those little snippets and think about it, and then take another little snippet and think about it again. And that's a lot of what people are doing as they bounce around. They want to read a little bit, digest, get curious, read a little bit more, digest. So if you can build out these webs of content, it's not going to happen overnight. So it's a plan that you make to say, and it's really great. Look at what you already have created, and you can kind of map that out and say, wow, we have a lot of discovery pieces, but we don't have enough, or we have a lot of decision pieces, but we don't have a lot of this consideration education. So I'm going to try to do one a month or one a quarter or one a week. Just make a plan for it to happen, and carve that time out. You'll start to build out that web. I think the big thing with marketing is people feel like, and marketers for worse, they know how to market. They know how to pressure buy and make you believe that you have to do everything all at once. And it's overwhelming.
Yep.
It is.
No, it never, no.
You don't have to. Like
Nobody's ever done that to us here at Tribe of Purpose.
It's not reasonable for most companies. And so what I like to come in to a company, I really like to work with companies who they're ready for a growth stage. So they've got their business operations set. Their marketing is like a little jumble. Maybe they have like some contractors, maybe there's one person, but they're ready to grow. And so we look at what's going on and we build out a plan, and then we figure out how we're going to execute that plan. So I help them, not just a strategy, but an execution plan. Who's going to do the work? When does it get done? What are we prioritizing? How does that work? Because rushed marketing is terrible marketing, but it can be so overwhelming for a business. I mean, that's day after. I was just at a conference last week in Denver, and pretty much everybody I talked to said the same thing. Like, I've been talking to these guys, and they're telling me I have to like make a brand and do my website. And I was like, okay, like maybe you do, but maybe you don't have to do all of it right now. So I think that's really important that we think about it long term and not just this like immediate rush, like scary thing. That's not sustainable.
Talking about the long term, I would love to get your perspective on really another rule of thumb we got from a previous podcast guest, Eric Holtzclaw. And he mentioned how it's like basically anything marketing wise you put out, you don't know if it worked or not for at least like a year. It's like you really don't know. Like if you put out a piece of evergreen content on YouTube, it's like we don't know what that's going to do for a year. That's kind of the test period, he called it, of whether or not it's really going to be successful or not. That change in consumer behavior you're talking about, and the way they interact and consume information. Do you think that shrinks that or elongates it? Because they want more information, but I would guess they also want it on a much shorter period there.
Well, it depends, of course. So generally, like up to a year is when you'll understand like the full impact of that. But you should be able to you should be able to be getting some kind of data like 3 to 6 months in. That's seeing what people are coming to, how they're interacting with it. Like with YouTube, you can see how long are people watching, what point are they dropping off. You can look at all of that stuff. So 3 to 6 months, you should start to see, and then within a year, you'll have like a clear understanding of what that looks like. But it also depends on how you're like marketing the marketing piece, right? Like how are people getting funneled to it? So it's not just, I'm sorry, but it's not just enough to just put the things out there. Like you have to tell people what to do all the time. You can't give them the decision. That's why you see, like when you see on YouTube, you watch a video and then creators will have like, here's the next video, choose between these two videos to watch something else. So you're taking that decision fatigue away, or that like activity. They'd have to go back to your site and then look through your videos and then see which one they want to do next, or hope that YouTube's algorithm brings something up. They're taking that, it's that transition piece that's the good thing, right? Like, how are you going to do that? If you're doing your email drip system, maybe one of those emails, you're asking them to follow you on social media. The next email is view this content, and then when they go to the YouTube video, they see the content, and then there's like, what's the next thing? It's always kind of like, what's the next direction? And then what happens? So that we're leaving as little like room as possible for that person to have to like do the hard work of making the decision to go into your stuff and look for something that they want. You're just serving them. You're not forcing them to consume it, but you're just making it easier for them. Like, hey, you just watch this content. This is sort of like the next piece. Do you want to watch that? Do you want to read that? So giving them the opportunity and making it easy. Like, that's the main thing. We want to make it easy for people. We have to make so many decisions all day long. So if you can just take that burden from somebody, that's such a gift.
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head, because what's popping into my mind is it's the cliffhanger. It's the, and then what? And then what? And because that's our nature, right? I mean, it's like, oh, that was cool. And then what? Oh, well, because if I don't put a then what, then I'm going to go then what over here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it is that I think that's such a simple way to put it, and because I've had plenty of folks, marketers and other coaches, the whole CTA thing, and that's what it is. I mean, that's the then what. But the way you just explained it, that's what popped into my head. Is I'm sitting here watching and going, then what?
Yep. It's all about that call to action. And here's something that I think is important to distinguish, right? So your call to action is not always going to be to buy. So if you're thinking about the different pieces of the customer journey, you think about the discovery stage, what's the goal? You want to think about what's the goal. So the goal is not to sell at that stage. The goal, depending on how long, I mean, if you're like a plumber or something, or if you're like an impulse buy, then yes, the goal is for them to see it and purchase. But if you're B2B, if you're like in construction, like big ticket items, it's a longer sales cycle. So that question is, I want to get them to come back. So what's the easiest thing I can get them to do to come back? Is it to look at my social media? Is it to sign up for my email to get something else? And then the next stage, what's the next easiest step? Eventually it is to like download the sales sheet or book a call. Like eventually that is that, but down the line, you want to say, like, you need to be clear about what is the goal. What do you want them to do now? I mean, it would be great. And you can always have an option for them to exit, this funnel and call you or purchase or make the appointment. But you have to be very clear about what's the next easiest thing for them to do. So these are all like pieces to think about of a marketing strategy that it's not just like that's what a good like marketing strategy marketing team is doing. They're just thinking about what's the whole process and how am I like to think of it as how am I showing up for my people? How am I supporting them through this and not leaving them off on their own to like wander around in the wilderness, you know?
Well, I thought you had some, Kim, but I didn't want to cut you off. But I also, in that line, what popped into my head is that because you said this, the impulse buy, and the know, like, and trust that we try to do with our brand, our marketing, and all that. Have you looked at maybe a scoring scale or something like that, especially, as the marketer from the outside coming into the company and gone and done the analysis and said, okay, well, tribe and purpose for this program, your know, like, and trust score should be 7. And for this program, it should be 9 or
like different thresholds. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. Or, I'm selling cold Coke on a hot day, 1, right?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Have you ever looked at anything like that?
No, I haven't I mean, I haven't maybe exactly done it that way. I come in and do audits and then look at, but I think what I really ask people about is what's their sales cycle, what's their sales process. So that gives you a lot of insight into that. So if it takes a year for somebody to purchase from you, then that's a different cycle than if it takes like 3 months or 5 minutes. So really understanding what that looks like. And then, we do lead scoring. So we score, how many times a person has interacted with you in different ways, and you can weight different activities with different points. And then when they get the high enough score, they come in. But I think that's all just been a little bit intrinsic. Just and also a lot of the work that I do, I really like the long sales cycle, the complicated stuff. Like I like it to be like because I like the relationship building. That's my favorite piece. So it's like, how are we going to build relationships? And I like long, convoluted problems. So so most of the things that I work with are a long sales cycle or it's like that relationship that we're building so that they come back again. So it's either a long sales cycle or a long relationship. So like a lifetime value of a customer. How many times are they going to come back and purchase from us?
I'd love to hear your thoughts to kind of shift gears a bit into measuring effectiveness of different aspects of your marketing and branding. The example that always comes to mind is like there's an old Freakonomics episode where he goes and talks about like going to, I think it was literally like Toyota, and it's like, hey, do you think your Toyotathon actually makes money? Like, oh yeah, we spend millions of dollars every year. Of course it makes money. It's like, I bet you if you stopped, you would still sell all those cars because it turns out that people just buy cars in October. It doesn't matter if it's Toyotathon or not. And there's this whole thing there, right? I think you could translate that to a lot of other areas, but it's just like you're talking about with the conference in Denver. You talk with the website guy, and he's going to say, well, you need a website. If you talk with the branding person, they're going to say you need your branding. There's always this like one size fits all. Well, I know this thing works, so therefore you need this thing. In reality, it's all of the things, and then how the hell do we tell what's actually working? We go through and say, I spent all this money here. Did that actually work? Or was it just that they liked me and I built a relationship while I was spending all that money on Google Ads? What are your thoughts kind of teasing those out?
So this is the hardest part because it's not straightforward. There's different
I know,
pieces.
And I'm sorry.
So the brand. No, I love getting into this though because it's important that we talk about it. And there are things that you need to do. So with the brand, it's nearly impossible to measure the effectiveness of your brand. You have to look at correlation. So which is hard. We redid our brand and we put in X amount of dollars putting it out, and we have seen an increase in sales over it's. I always think that except for e-commerce, marketing should be measured over time. So not looking like every day or things like that. The other thing is that you need to clearly understand what your goal is. And that's before you even make your marketing plan. What is your business goal? Because if we are growing the business to sell, if we're growing the business into a legacy, if we're entering a new market. Those are all different plans with different activities. So I always make sure that we're clear on the business goals, and we have the things in place for the business operations, so that then we map out. So I'm always like looking at the goal, and then I'm planning backwards. And then for each stage, you need to, okay, you have to break down that goal. So what are the mini goals? Like, what are the objectives for this? Great. How are we going to reach that? Okay. And then what are the KPI, the key performance indicators that let us know that we're reaching this goal? So it depends on what the work is. And then you measure it over time. So I think monthly works really well, that you look at the numbers, but you look at what they're doing. So, because we know it takes, 3 to 6 to 9 months to start seeing impact. And then that depends on your sales cycle too. But having those pieces of data in place, and let's see, okay, we want to drive people to the website because then we want to do this thing. So you have to identify what you're going to measure, and then you have to measure it and look at that over time and use that like a science experiment, right? So you're making a hypothesis, and then you're setting up the experiment, and then what are you learning from it? What do we need to tweak? Is this working? Is this not working? So that's really how I approach measuring in marketing. And then we can give something back. We can say, but I need to know, like, that's why as a fractional CMO, being in that C-suite, because I want to know what is finance seeing. That helps me make decisions. I want to know what's going on in business ops. I want to know all of these pieces so that we can make, marketing decisions that are supporting what's going on in the rest of the business. And then we build the plan down, and then I can report back to the CEO, hey, we saw that this product was doing well in this season, so we started marketing it, 3 months before the season. What was the outcome? So I can get my outcomes from finance, I can get my outcomes from business ops, I can get that different feedback, but it has to be defined ahead of time. And then you have to do the work to see, and then you're just making small changes throughout as you're learning.
From a stats perspective on that, or probability, whichever way you want to kind of tease it out, which do you think is the block there? Is it that the customer journey is so long that it's hard to connect them back to the initial spark? Or is it more so that you can't tell which spark started the fire in the first place? Does that make sense? Where do you think the break comes from trying to tease those things out?
I think it's both of them. It's that we're dealing with humans. So if people would just go through our funnels the way we've planned them, then we could see people are breaking out here, right? But they don't do folks. That. so you don't really know. I mean, that's not for all industries. Every company is different. Some industries, there is a way that people go through, but the longer your sales cycle, the more convoluted it is. So you have to look at sales. You have to understand the pipeline, like what's happening. Are you working with sales to give them what they need to help move people through that pipeline? You can also look at time, so maybe we can shrink the time that it takes for somebody to go from discovery into a purchase by, giving sales what they need to help move people, or for educating people before they move into the sales cycle. So there's a lot of pieces that we can be thinking about. I'm a custom, I create custom plans. I usually work with people who are breaking things, breaking systems, wanting to do something different within their industry. So you can, there's definitely industries, marketing agencies that have kind of a little conveyor belt of how they set things up. And there's nothing wrong with that. That works really well for a lot of people, but for the kind of people that I work with, we're generally trying to get into a new industry, or we're trying to do things different within an industry. So we have to do things a little bit more custom. So I'm always kind of it's just a lot about asking questions and what do we need to learn? What do we need to understand? And then how are we going to measure that? So everybody's goals are a little bit different. And I end up making a lot of custom reports.
Oh, I love that idea because I think that's so true. Because what popped into my head earlier, and I'll throw this at you for your thoughts too, is copycat marketing, right? Well, they're like a competitor, uh, my Bob's widgets over here, they seem to be doing pretty good doing these things. So Otis's widgets, we want to do something like they are. Why can't we do something like they are? Have you seen how that plays
I'm
out? Oh,
before you go, Katie, I'm just picturing the example of it's like we're sitting there. It's like, well, Katie, she smiles all the time. People seem to like her. So Otis, we need a smile. It's like people hate us, so we're just smiling all the time. It's like, all right, but now we're really staying away from those folks.
Yeah. That
do I need to repeat it because Camden blew the whole thought process of the question?
no,
It
I get
happens.
it. I get it. You guys should smile more. I think that's what he was saying. No, so that's really where we get into it, and it depends on what your market is, right? So if you're in a market that's not super saturated, there's a lot of customers, um, you can go with a company. Like there might be a company that specializes in what you do, and that's fine. That is totally fine, and you can get there. But the problem is if differentiation becomes really important, if you're in a tighter market or if you're brand new. The other thing is you don't know what's going on in that company, so you don't know that person's uncle won the lottery and has just decided to gift them a bunch of advertising money, and that's what you're seeing. um, you don't know that they're trying to compete with you, and you don't know what their internal operations looks like. So you really have to focus on you, and what your message is and what you're saying. So trademark your trademark. What if you have a tagline, if you have a logo, like all of those things, make sure that you're protected. But don't look too close. You got to keep an eye on your competitors, and you got to see what they're doing, but don't let that supersede what you're doing and what your customers need and your connection to your customers. What we've been seeing, so their company that I work with, we decided early on that they couldn't compete on price. There's no way that they could go to the bottom with price. So we added their metal manufacturer. So we added service as part of that's one of the products. And we rely heavily on that service, how we treat people and when they show up. It's just little things that we've done. When they show up in the shop, we have right on the door. They don't even need to come in for anything. They can just open the door and grab a pencil and graph paper that's branded. They can come in, grab a cup of coffee, snack, and be on their way, because we want that. And then they've all been they're manufacturing metal. They've been in that for a long time, but there have also been contractors. So they have that experience. So we rely on that as our differentiator. And we've seen that when new people come in, we're not going to compete on price. We're not pricing down to the bottom, but eventually people are going to spend less money. They're going to save them money by getting them what they need. We catch the issues before they become an issue. They may put in an order and our guys are like, hey, this doesn't look great. We need to switch something out, right? So another person wouldn't do it, or the order would get messed up. They'd have to waste time and waste money, right? So that's what we look at, what our strengths are and how are we going to show that in the market. We're aware of the threats and we're aware of our weaknesses, and then we make a plan that minimizes those or protects us from those, and we really focus on that. So we still keep an eye out on what's going on. We monitor, and there's we monitor their stake in the market. We monitor their voice, their share of voice, it's called, like how much they're showing up or on the internet. And we stick to our plan, and we run our plan, and we look at the numbers that our plan comes back, and we adjust on those numbers and not on what our competitors are doing.
I'd love to take that same kind of subject a little bit broader, thinking about like what I would call like the race to be second that you can see a lot of the time. In the sports where we see, whoever wins the Super Bowl, it's like, well, they ran the ball a lot. Next NFL draft, where everyone's drafting running backs, we're going to run the ball next year. And it becomes this, you mimic whatever worked best. Movies, like rom-coms are back, we're bumping out rom-coms, those kind of things there. Could you talk about how that race to be second fits into the marketing world, and maybe how folks can try to break out of that race and, try to keep innovating rather than just trying to be that race to get second place each time?
Yeah. So someone said to me, another podcast I was on, we talked about being a trendsetter or a trailblazer and the difference between those two. So following trends is expensive because they shift. So you put all of this money into a trend, and then the trend shifts, and all of a sudden you have to shift again. You have to spend more money. If you're a trailblazer, if you are the one setting the trend or putting that out there, and that's about sustainable growth and sustainable marketing. So you're looking at, what are our long-term goals? What is the market telling me about these long-term goals? You evaluate the trends. Does it fit with our long-term goals? Yes. All right, let's adopt that. Does it not quite fit? Then no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something different. So it's just having, it goes back to the foundation, which is so hard to invest in, and because you just want to go fast, but it's building a strong marketing foundation. So it's having a strong brand architecture, and a good brand architecture is also, it really outlines your business. You can come back to that when you're making business decisions. It helps keep you in scope. It really outlines, I mean, the work that I do, it's like, there's always a little bit of business strategy mixed in, but it's like, this is the work that we do. This is the people that we serve. This is our purpose as a company, as a business. So when opportunities come up to shift, you go back to that document and you see if it's aligned. And if it's not aligned, you either don't follow that trail, or you decide it's big enough, we're going to shift our brand and we're going to make those shifts in this document. But it's having a solid foundation that keeps you from just kind of veering off all over the place and following trends. It's so hard to slow down and invest in that. But when you do, it makes everything easier. It saves you a lot of money, and a lot of time and a lot of headache.
Oh, and I love that. I mean, you're speaking my language. Put together a plan. Got to have a vision. Got to have the foundation to build to the vision. Oh yeah, yeah. You have your tribe and purpose hat there in the background. You just ain't wearing it because you're speaking the same stuff we do, which is awesome. And I
well, she's gonna head down to the Dixie Chicken, find your name on the wall. We're gonna send her a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because it's right around the corner from Bozeman, Montana. It's just a quick trip. It's just a quick trip. And I'll tell you what I learned. It's a broader sense, but it's the patience. I think it's Camden. I've talked about Hormozy. What's his first name? Dadgummit. Alex Hormozy on several occasions and various things about, well, I did 100 of them. And he's like, no, that's not a data set. In his learning too, that he's talked about. And I think that is such a critical piece, that it's not a post this thing, put the sign in your yard, and voila, it worked, or it didn't work. It's patience, and that's an important thing to have, and in a lot of areas in life and business. So, Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, kind of in the same vein, just in the kind of understanding what the consumer's at and, how much information they need. And I think I got the stat right that you said, Katie, if not, correct me on it. But you said about 50% of people, 50% of customers need 7 to 8 pieces of information in order to make that decision. So that is a lot of information, especially if you start getting into the social media marketing of it's like you have like 2 seconds to get their attention each time. Look, I don't know what that math rabbit hole looks like, Katie, but it's a scary thing. And that's why people need to call you, I guess, right?
Yeah.
The caller first so they can get that foundation built up and rather
Mhm.
than just throwing things up at the wall, right?
Yeah, the spaghetti method does not work very well.
Katie, how about you? What'd you learn?
Well, I think I learned that the Dixie Chicken is where you should go when you want to have a good nostalgic time and find some bottle caps. Um, but I think I also learned that it's really important. I think going back to that foundational piece that you guys really, really, talk about, educate on, and how your business foundation is the start of everything, right? If a company doesn't have their business goals clearly identified, then I can't come in and do my job. And so it's building the foundation and building the layers in the correct way that is more important than just kind of getting out and doing the thing. You kind of have to do both. But I think the other thing that we talked a lot about was, if you want to have a legacy, if you want to build a sustainable brand, and the pieces that go into that long-term thinking, both in like how you build the foundation of the business to get you there, and then you layer, now I think I want to think about it from this conversation is layering the marketing foundation on top of the business foundation.
Yeah. There's no doubt. You got to be, in order for you to be successful, you have to be in that inner circle. I think that's such an important thing. And how do folks invite you into their inner circle and bring on Wild Path Consulting as a partner?
Yeah. So a couple of good places to catch me. I love showing up on LinkedIn. I talk a lot there. Clearly, I could keep talking about marketing forever. But my name is Katie Smith. So you have to search Katie Smith Wild Path Consulting or Wild Path to find me. Sometimes you even just have to search Wild Path Consulting and find me through there. Then the easier way is you can just go to my website. It's followthewildpath.com. Or you can email me at Katie, Katie at followthewildpath.com. And I'm just so happy to talk with folks. My real heart is helping people get out of that confusion and find a clear path forward. So I love connecting with anybody who needs it.
And before you go, Dan, I want to give the round of applause. I won't clap too loud to mess with the mic. But Katie, as a marketer, you hit this so well. We always make fun of folks of you get the really cute name and then it doesn't quite work right. And you're trying to read the website off. Followthewildpath.com. Boom, perfect. And it's cute and it still works. It's not like Aquatunities or Dad. What was Sean's the other day? 02 income, and he's spelling out 0 and then the number 2 and too cute. That's perfect. That is the right balance in the middle there. So. Yeah. Round of applause there. That is hard to do when you come up with a business name.
All right, Katie, thank you so much for your time today. It's been quite a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a joy speaking with you both.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Katie Smith, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again. We'll see you all next time.